Okay, well, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Is this on? Yeah? I'd just like to thank you for your interest, and I'd also like to welcome you to this session on domestic violence in Lebanon, being hosted by the Issam Fares Institute. And I'd like to thank the Issam Fares Institute for their interest in hosting this event. And in approaching them, I felt that their mission was particularly suited to this kind of issue. As you know, IFI has got a reputation for aiming to raise the quality of public policy-related debate and decision-making in the Arab world, also enhancing the Arab world's input into international affairs, and also facilitating and enriching a dialogue between academics, policymakers, and civil society. Now, globally, domestic violence is widespread. So we have statistics from the World Health Organization, for example, in 2005, showing that 50% of women from Bangladesh, Ethiopia, and Peru reported physical and sexual violence by partners. And when I was thinking of putting together a panel on this topic, I wondered whether AUB had held events or lectures on domestic violence, either in general terms or specifically related to Lebanon. And so, I was reviewing the archives of the website, and it would seem that this hasn't been a topic addressed academically or in policy terms at AUB in its recent history, at least, although it's increasingly becoming a prominent public policy issue in the Lebanese press and in public discourse. So most recently, this summer, in July 2013, after a particularly brutal case of a mother of 5 being beaten to death by her husband, it galvanized public support for the public campaigning of the adoption of a draft law aimed at protecting women from domestic violence. And on Monday, July 22nd, 2013, the Parliamentary Joint Committees in Lebanon approved the law to protect women from family violence, but under a new title called the Bill for the Protection of Women and Family Members Against Domestic Violence. Now, the NGO CAFA, it's a women's NGO, Enough Violence and Exploitation, have led campaigning on this issue. And so they welcomed this step, but at the same time they expressed concerns regarding a number of amendments made to the bill. And perhaps we'll hear more of this throughout the panel, and it might be something that we discuss. Today, November 25th, is a day designated by the United Nations as the International Day for the Elimination of Violence against Women, which is one of the UN's priority areas. So for these reasons, it was decided to hold this event today in order to raise awareness and to consider this issue from a range of perspectives. So in terms of understanding the issue of domestic violence in sociological terms, so I'm a sociologist. Typically, sociologists will ask questions like, why is domestic violence so prevalent in society? It's actually the most common crime against women and the most common cause of death for women aged between age 16 and 44. And what ways does it relate to structural inequalities between men and women existent in society? How does it relate to challenging contexts of economic deprivation or war, for example? Now, I'm going to be introducing each speaker in a little bit more depth as they start to speak. But just to give you an idea, we're really hoping to get a range of perspectives here from the political, the practical, the personal, and the legal. So we have with us former Minister Charbel Nahas, who will speak from a governmental perspective on this issue. And we have Ms. Jacqueline Hajjar, who's the founder of a women's shelter in Beirut, one of only 3 shelters in the whole country, and she's doing amazing work with a vulnerable group of women, as well as work with men and also training of the police. And we will hear a personal testimony from Rehab, who is a survivor of domestic violence. And then finishing up, we'll hear from Ms. Lydia Farah, who is a lawyer, and she also volunteers for the NGO that I just mentioned, CAFA, and she will speak to some of the legal implications of this issue. Now, just in terms of organisation, each speaker will speak for no more than 15 minutes, and then we hope to open up the session for question and further dialogue and debate around the policy implications of this critically important issue. So now I'd like to just give a few words of introduction of former Minister Charbel Nahas, who no doubt needs no introduction, but is a former Labour minister in the McCarthy's second government, one of the 11 change and reform ministers, and widely considered to be a progressive whose priority has been to improve the living conditions for the country's disenfranchised poor. He's also a leading economist and author of many publications relating to the Lebanese economy, and has acted as an expert for a number of Lebanese state institutions as well as international organisations such as the World Bank and the UN, and also was a professor for 12 years at the Lebanese University. And previous to his position as Labour Minister, he was Minister of Telecommunications in 2009. So without wanting to take more time from the content of this panel, I'd now like to welcome Minister Charbel Nahas. Thank you.
طبعا أنا بعتذر كثير على التأخير. المسألة اللي نحن بصددها اليوم مسألة العنف ضد النساء، أو مثل ما سميت العنف المنزلي. لابد إنه ننظر إنه من خصائصها إنه بالنسبة لغالبية الأشخاص بمجتمعنا هيدا عنف إذا ما كان مبالغ فيه هو عنف مشروع، وبالتالي وهيدي مفارقة طبعا هيدا بيستدعي عمل قانون خاص، وإلا ما بدها قانون خاص. هالمسألة في الواحد طبعا ينظر لها من ناحية الأذى يلي المادي والمعنوي يلي بيصيب الأشخاص اللي بيتعرضوا لهذا العنف أو لأشكال أخرى من العنف. إنما تصور بهالندوة الضروري يستوقفنا هو الميزة يلي تجعل لدى الغالبية من أبناء مجتمعنا هذا العنف ما لم يكن مبالغا فيه أو مفرطا أنه مقبول. وكمان عفوا على التكرار هيدا اللي بيبرر طرح قانون خاص لهالشيء. هيدا بيذكر بمسائل عديدة مشابهة يلي كمان عن حسن نية وعن إرادة رغبة بمواجهة حالات فضائحية بتؤدي إلى مطالبة بقوانين خاصة لحالات، مثلا مطالبة بقانون خاص للعاملات في الخدمة المنزلية، لأنه هيدا من ناحية تانية ما مفترض يكون فيه، يعني لا بل بالعكس مفترض يكون انه الاستثناءات اللي بتستثني العاملين بالخدمة المنزلية سواء كانوا إناث أو ذكور أجانب أو لبنانية يطبق عليهم أنظمة العمل العالمية العامة. الإضافة للنقطة الأولى في نقطة تانية اللي هي إنه القانون إذا انوجد أكيد الواحد بيأمل إنه يسمح للمتأذي المعتدى عليه إنه أمام المحاكم يقدر يلجأ لهذا القانون. بس بالواقع احنا بنعرف كتير منيح إنه إذا كان هذا الأذى ناتج عن ممارسة تراتبية يلي غالبية الناس بيقروا فيها كمان مرة ما لم يكن الممارسة مفرطة، هيدا معناته انه في اختلال بميزان القوى، وكمان ولازم نكون واقعيين بهالامر هذا الاختلال مقر به من قبل غالبية الناس بما فيهم النساء والخادمات، مش انه هن شايفين انه هيدا شيء مش طبيعي. يعني مش انه بهالمجتمع في صنفين من البشر، في النسوان هن بيحبوا العدالة وعندهم منظومة فكرية معينة، وفي الرجال لا ما هن كلهم سوا فرد عجينة هدول. وبالتالي هذا القانون كونه ما بيتم اللجوء له إلا في حال المقاضاة والمحكمة، هيهات توصل القصة للمحكمة بغالبية الحالات حتى لو في قانون ما حتوصل للمحكمة، وإذا وصلت للمحكمة كمان حدث ولا حرج شو بيصير هونيك. وبالتالي الأهم شيء بهذا القانون قد تكون المعركة يلي واكبت السعي لإقراره، مش إنه رح يحل المشكلة. القانون إجا يسمح إنه يظهر إشكالية التراتبيات يلي قائمة في المنظومة المجتمعية اللي نحن، ومش لحالنا يعني الدنيا، غالبية المنظومات المجتمعية هيك خاضعين لإلها. كمان مرة النقطة الثالثة، كل هاي الأمور ما نحن كدولة يعني إذا بعد في ناس مصدقين إنه هون في ناس بدهم يعملوا دولة يعني، ونحن ماضيين معاهدات طويلة عريضة وحاطين خبار بالدستور وإلى آخره. وبالتالي نحن لما بنقول إنه في مساواة وبنقول إنه حقوق الإنسان والشرعة والملحقات تبعولها وكل هذا الحكي، طيب ما هيدا إجا بعد وهو في التراتبية المراجع القانونية أسمى من القوانين الجزئية الظرفية، فكيف بقى بقوانين الطوائف اللي هي منا موجودة إلا من باب تسامح الدولة بوجودها؟ وبالتالي إذا كان حتى مش المشرع، على المشرع كسلان وما بيشتغل شيء وما بيعيد تنظيم التشريعات لما بيصدر تشريع أحدث وأسمى بما يلزم بتعديل التشريعات الأدنى والأقدم، ما بيعملوها. بس القاضي، ليش القاضي بيسترجي هو يبني قراره على المرجعية العليا؟ لا، بيروح بيلاقي أصغر برغشة بتكون عملها موظف بيسوى فجلة بيصير بيعتد فيها، في حين انه المبادئ الدستورية الأساسية بيعتبر هو شو بده بالشغلة. ليش؟ لأنه هو كمان مش انه غير مدرك لهذا الأمر، لأنه هو أيضا ينتمي إلى المنظومة الاجتماعية ذاتها يلي تقر بهذه التراتبية. وضمن هالسياق في جماعة الديانات يلي بيجوا بيحكوا كأنه الدين له كلمة في الانتظام العام. ما نحن الحمد لله ما في عنا دين دولي نحن، ورجل الدين مثله مثل غيره عنده رأي، ما له بيمون على حدا رجل الدين إلا من أراد طوعيا أن يتبع تعاليمه مثل أي واحد يعني. بس ما بيمنع أنه بنستأنس برأيهم، شو خصهم؟ هيدي مبادئ. كل هذه المسائل تطرح لما بنتكلم عن قضية العنف ضد النساء والعنف المنزلي. بدنا نضيف كمان بعد بعد خامس يمكن، هو انه غالبية الجمعيات يلي بتسمي حالها جمعيات نسائية، كمان كلمة غريبة هي مثل عنا مساجين اسلاميين. نحن عنا مساجين اسلاميين، هدول ما بنحكمهم صار لنا 15 سنة ما لأنه اسلاميين. كيف اسلاميين؟ شو يعني اسلاميين؟ جمعيات نسائية. شو يعني جمعيات نسائية؟ شو النساء هن شو بدهم يعملوا يعني فيدرالية منطقة؟ كيف يعني؟ شو الحكي هذا؟ ما بيجوز تكون هذه المقاربات لا ترقى إلى أطروحات ولو جزئية يكون موضوع الفعل مناقشة التراتبيات الموروثة أو المستحدثة. في كتير منها مستحدث ضمن المجتمعات، منا مطلب فئوي. ما في فئة اسمهم النساء، مثل ما بين العاملين ما في فئة اسمهم العاملات الأجنبيات في الخدمة المنزلية، لأنه هؤلاء تحدد موقعهم بحكم التراتبية، وإلا مش موجودة هاي. يعني بحب دائما أذكر هالمثل، لحد الستينات الصناعي كلهم لبنانيين. طبعا اليوم أولادهم أولاد خياتهم وكذا بيتنكروا لأنه عيب. نحن اليوم في عالم كتير بتقول هذا الشغل بيعملوه الأجانب والعرب والسوريين والبنغلاديشية اللبنانية ما بيشتغلوا هالشيء. هيدا كله ترسيخ لتراتبيات يلي بتنظم مجتمع بتدعم بأي حجج يلي كان دين وتقاليد واخبار، إنما هي في واقع الحال تراتبيات. عذرا على التكرار، الغالبية العظمى من ينتمي إلى هذا المجتمع يقر بها ما لم تؤدي إلى حالات في إفراط. من هذا المنظار بتصور المسألة اللي طرحت بسياق السعي لإقرار هذا القانون كان كتير مهم، لأنه كشف بمدى محدود بس مش قليل كيف ممكن التعامل. أول شيء شو النوايا، مين مهتم عن جد وبشو، لأنه كمان مرة بعد ما اعتذرت كذا مرة، أول شيء عن التأخير بعدين عن التكرار هلأ بعد مرة، على أهمية فضح الاعتداء. أي اعتداء، المسألة اللي عم نحكي عنها لها بعد يتخطى مسائل إحقاق الحق الشخصي. هيدي مسألة تطرح في الأساس مبدأ إعادة النظر بمحرمات تحصن تراتبيات اجتماعية. وهيدي معركة منا بسيطة، لأنه هيدي موجودة بكل بيت، بكل شخص، عند كل واحد. وطبعا المسألة الأساسية بتصير كيف تعقد التحالفات، لأنه لما الواحد ببلش يصيب، يعني يكسر المحرمات، يصيب شغلات يلي معتبرة من البديهيات، هون في ناس أذكياء بممارسة السلطة بيدركوا بسرعة وبوضوح إنه إذا بدأ كسر حلقات معينة من المحرمات، هيدي فيها تنسحب على حلقات أخرى، وتقوم تحالفات فعلية بالسياسة مش بالإيديولوجيا حول هذا الأمر لتحصين المحرمات. ما في اختلاف بهالمسألة، بهالإشكالية، بهالطرح بين مسألة أنه العنف المنزلي هو بمجرد الإقرار فيه كسر للسلطة الأبوية يلي قائمة على توزيع أدوار. بس السلطة الأبوية مش بس سلطة موجودة بالعائلة، تستخدم رمزيا لتبرير كتير من الممارسات بمجالات كتيرة، من السياسة إلى الدين إلى المال إلى أرباب العمل إلى كل شيء بدكم. هيدي لا تختلف في طبيعتها عن مسألة التعامل مع حالة تانية اللي كتير مهمة، اللي هي قضية العمال غير اللبنانيين، ولا سيما الإناث بيناتهم، ولا سيما بيناتهم لأنه هون الأكثر استفزازا الخادمات. وهيدا لا ينفصل أيضا عن مسألة العمل النقابي بشكل عام، واستخدام قدرات بعض المؤسسات مثل ما بيعمل هذا البريطاني مايكل رايت بمؤسسة سبينيز، فيحولها إلى مؤسسة إرهابية، بيشتري قضاة وصحفيين وبيهدد ناشطين من خلال أرباب عملهم ليشحطون من شغلهم، لأنه هيدا مدعوم من كل منظومة التسلط يلي بتخلي هيدا المجتمع يرضخ لواحد مثل هيدا الزلمة يلي لا عنده عشيرة ولا عنده طائفة ولا عنده دولة وراه. بهيدا مخلى 2000 شخص، يعني 2000 عائلة بلبنان مش بس ما بقى يحلموا يطالبوا بحقهم، ما يسترجوا يقولوا انه فيهم يطالبوا بحقهم. اذا واحد مثل هيدا لا عنده طائفة ولا عنده ميليشيا ولا عنده دولة وراه، قادر يزل إلى هذا الحد 2000 عائلة. يتصوروا يلي عندهم وراهم طوائف وميليشيات ودول، وتصوروا بأي مجتمع نحن عايشين فعليا، مجتمع من الأذلال. وشكرا.
Thank you very much. Now, Ms. Jacqueline Hajar, who will speak, she, as I mentioned, she founded the shelter Beit el-Hanan, Home of Tenderness. She worked for many years at the Lebanese American University, teaching cultural studies and English, and has since been doing some excellent work at Beit el-Hanan. Working with survivors of violence, helping them emotionally, psychologically and physically, sheltering and rehabilitating them through workshops, classes and trainings. And now I'll hand over to you and I'll give you the...
Good morning. I'm very happy to be here today to try and explain how we created this NGO. As you have just heard, I was mainly a professor at LAU, at the university, teaching for 30 years English and comparative literature and CS, cultural studies. And everybody is astonished that when I retired, I decided to start this home for abused women, for women survivors of violence. Okay, I taught at several universities, not only LAU, and I noticed that most of my students had very difficult problems with their families mainly, and very often they didn't come to class because of these problems. And this is why, when I retired, I decided that I will try to alleviate the suffering of these women. And with the help of my sister, Evelyn Akkad, we bought an apartment in 2008 and refurbished it, bought furniture and appliances, and got a legal permission to start this home for abused women. We started really in 2009 because it became a functional place and a legal NGO. And in this way, we joined 3 other functioning shelters, the YW, Bon Pasteur, Ra'i Saleh, okay, and Mary and Martha. At the time, these were the 3 that were functioning. And we decided that the women that we were going to take care of would be mainly beaten and raped women. Okay, these young ladies were facing many problems. And in fact, even though I only started the home in 2009, I have been working with such women since 20 years ago, when a young lady ran away from home and landed on my doorstep. She had been beaten and raped by both her father and her eldest brother, and she was only 17-year-old. She was terrified, and she didn't know what to do. So my husband and I welcomed her into our home, and she lived with us for about 4 years before she became independent. And she studied at LAU, took her BA in communication arts. Now she's married. She has 3 children, very happily married. It's really nice. In fact, many of the women who come to our shelter finally and getting married and having happy lives with their husbands and children. And many people say, how can it be possible? They started in such a terrible way, and finally we find them married with children, happy. Anyway, I think that maybe it's because of the program that we have decided to implement within the home. We are mainly trying to make the shelter a home, not a place where they come and go and that's it. We celebrate all their birthdays, we have parties for them, we have workshops, exercises, they cook together in the kitchen, etc., etc. I want to show you a few pictures so that you will realize how the house functions. Okay, at first you will see a few explanations. Okay, we know that survivors of violence and their children were always welcome at Beit el-Hanan, home of tenderness. Okay, our mission is to help survivors and their children regardless of their religion, sect, age, nationality, education, socioeconomic status, etc. And what we try to do is try to help these women get fully integrated within society. We want them to contribute to their society. So we improve their education, we help them find safe and secure places after leaving Beit al-Hanan. We try to find employment so that they will become self-sufficient, self-supporting. And we are always hoping to open other shelters if possible. Okay, we offer them psychological services, psychiatric help if they need it, because many of them have been put by their families in Deir Salib, where they have received treatment. Many of them have tried to commit suicide, are taking a number of medicines. When they come to us, some of us are taking between 10 and 15 different medicines that the different doctors and family have offered, trying to help them. Within a month or two, they are completely weaned from all these medicine, and they start really living a more normal life. And many of them, by the way, after this vocational, educational counseling, all the help that they get in the home, choose to go back to their families, because we also deal with their families. Okay, I will explain this later a little bit more. Okay, this is our working board. Okay, I'm the CEO and chairperson. Cynthia Shamas is our psychologist and assistant to me, dealing with all kinds of very complicated things. And we have Lina Makarem, the administrator, Mehdi Hab, who is a house mother, day shift. We have a day shift, a night shift, a weekend shift, and we have an accountant and a cook. Rehab is our cook now, and she will talk about her story later on. Okay, this is the kind of home that we have. Okay, just everything was refurbished and redone. This is the beginning of it, and many of them cannot go out, so we try to make them do exercises in the house, have a treadmill. These are some of the women that we treated, some of the mothers with their children, and we offer them courses, English and computers mainly, but also cooking and music and different things. We have a lot of workshops for the women because we feel that they need to understand many things. When they come to us, many of them have been locked in the house for years. Some of them have never gone shopping or have not gone to schools, have not used money. They have to be taught all these things in the home. So the beneficiaries are offered workshops covering different domestic and gender-based violence explanations, the kind of treatment options that they can have, and how to deal with grief, with spiritual healing, with sexual abuse, with how to express themselves in poetry, in music, etc. In fact, Rehab is the poet in our home now. She has a real talent, and I'm sure she will maybe share with you some of these things. Okay, this is one of the workshops. Okay, we had several people come and explain about trauma. Okay, this is Piruz Iftikhari. He dealt with poetry and he made them write poems in Arabic and in English. Okay, here okay, Dr. Cynthia Hahn dealt with grief and how to deal with grief, because when they come, they have so much pain inside that has to come out and has to be exorcised in a way so that they will be able to live. And we also tried to make them realize the connection between the body and the soul and the spirit. We make them do exercises. We had several people come and teach them how to do that. We also had spiritual counseling. We had 4 women come, and they taught them about how to deal with the anger in them and how to forgive the people who have hurt her. Okay, these are some of the people. In one of the workshops, we had all these people, some from the home and some who came just to hear. And okay, this was when we had our Christmas tree on. We had also music therapy. Okay. Okay. We also try during summer to take them up to the mountains and to have a summer camp where they are taught certain things and they enjoy being up in the mountains. We also have had a Kiwan trip and Easter egg hunt, Christmas party, Ramadan iftar, birthday parties, graduation party. Anyway, this is up in the camp. They enjoyed it very much. We allowed the mother to take their children if they could. We allowed them to go. And we have help. We receive help for these girls to be able to go up. Okay, this is a birthday party and Christmas dinner. We sing, we cook. Oh, this is some of the cooking of Rehab. So this is some of the first dishes that she did. This was the Ramadan iftar. This is still the Easter egg hunt. We color eggs. We brought all the children and we said, let's color eggs. And then we hid them up in the mountains and we let them find them. And then when they graduated, okay, graduation is usually every year we have a graduation where the beneficiaries who have dealt with the workshops and such, you know, how much have they learned? Because we make them fill a questionnaire at the beginning and then one at the end to see how much they have learned and how much they understand and how much they still need to learn and to understand. So we took them for lunch outside just to change. Okay, and this is the graduation ceremony. This was with the American Embassy, and we had different people, different beneficiaries who received their graduation paper. Okay, this is again a big meal that Rehab prepared. Okay, this is the Kiwan trip. They love to be out. And you see, they love to be with others, to be able to run outside, to be in the forest. Many of them have not gone out before. Okay. Also, we realized that we wanted the community to be touched. And here we are trying to see how to reach the community. We did a whole training for the police force. It was a 4-hour training during the month of March. We asked, a specialist on these questions to come from the States, and Sylvia Saadi came and taught all the new recruits for the police. There were 500 women police and 1,500 male men learning. We thought that they would only allow us to teach the women, but they said, no, we want all the police force to be trained to know what is it about? What about this domestic violence? How do they recognize it? How to deal with it? And as you can see, it was huge rooms filled with the police. And it was very interesting because many of them did not realize what we were explaining. Okay, we met with the top people in the police, you know, Colonel Joseph Callas, for example, or Qa'id Bey and others, and we explained to them what we were doing. Okay, we also tried to meet other people when we had some problems at the emergency. We went there, and we talked to Dr. Nicola Bartley, who is responsible for the emergency, and gave us a lot of explanations and help. Okay, we asked Leo Burnett to do an awareness campaign. I don't know if this will become a reality, but we hope so. And, okay, we talked at different places, a meeting of Women's League, the Women's Club, the American Women's Club, and now at AUB. Okay, we have some statistics I would like to share with you. Since 2009, Beit el-Hanan has hosted 33 women and 5 children. And the women's age ranged between 16 and 52. So you see, we have all ages, all kinds of problems, because they were from different countries, from Lebanon, Palestine, Egypt, Ethiopia, Bangladesh, Ukraine, Australia, and USA. We even had some from the USA, so very interesting cases. Okay, the length of stay ranged between 1 month and 2 years in the home. But the women I have dealt with, it was up to 4 years. I need 4 years to really make them feel completely healed, completely able to deal with their lives and, you know, to get married, to have children, to deal well with their lives. And also we realized that 4 years are necessary for them to be able to start again, because they need to be trained. Many of them don't have much education, so they have to be taught quite a lot of things. And you know, also we try not only to deal with the women, but to deal with their families. We discovered that Abad has a whole group taking care of men, angry men. And we have a number of men who were willing to take the training. And of course, when it was the husband of the woman who was in the home, after it would take about 6 months to 1 year for the man to be able to deal with his anger and such, and stop beating the woman. And very often they could go back together and live a totally different life, because they could deal with their emotions better. Okay, this is the first wedding that took place in our home. Okay, this is the marriage of Samar. She now has a little baby girl. And, you know, they still come. Even after they graduate, they come, they ask questions, they telephone when they have problems. We're always willing to follow them up. And, you know, they call us Mama. Okay, I'm Mama Jacqueline. You know, and others, the house mother is Mama Mary, etc. We are their mother, and whenever they have questions, they come to us, okay? Okay, I would like to acknowledge so many of the people who helped us with this home. Okay, of course, the American Embassy, the Foundation for the Future, Global Fund for Women, Mediterranean Women's Fund, American Women's Club, private donors from America and Europe, HOME, which is a doctor's NGO, okay, the emergency at AUB, okay, and we have doctors who donate their services, you know, the psychiatrists, gynecologists. We have some who come to Beit el-Hanan and donate their time, because you see the women need to talk to somebody, and very often we don't have time to talk to all of them. Okay, we can have 12 women at one time. And the main objectives of Beit el-Hanan, Home of Tenderness, is first to protect and shelter the women. But also we need to deal with their problem, and we need to make them aware of the solutions through the workshops. And finally, the third objective is to rehabilitate them and make them re-enter into society. And to do that, we cannot only deal with the women, we have to deal with the families, we have to deal with the society. We have decided to go to schools, and when they allow us to talk to the young people, because it is when they are young that they will listen and that they will realize that domestic abuse is unacceptable, that beating cannot be tolerated. Okay, this is mainly what I wanted to share. Okay.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline.
I have one more thing, that we have some brochures. If any one of you would like some more information, you can pick up one. It is in 3 languages, and you're welcome to pick up one when you go out.
I'd like to now introduce Rihab, who has been staying at Beit el-Hanan with Jacqueline. She's a survivor herself of domestic violence. I won't go into the details of her story. She will speak in her own words, and Cynthia, you will translate for Rihab. But Rihab has been with Jacqueline at Beit el-Hanan now for more than a year, and she came in a very, very difficult, severe condition, but she's progressed hugely, and she's learning now to live and enjoy her life. Please, Rihab.
اوكي اسمي رحاب خزعل. عشت شوي طفولة حزينة لأنه عندي إعاقة بإيدي وبإجري. إيدي ما في أرفعهم أكتر من هيك، وعندي شلل بإجري ما في أوقف كتير يعني عجل. تجوزت وطلقت. جوازي كان فاشل ومرار 4 سنين ونص. أخذت بنتي معي ل9 سنين، رجعوا أخذوها مني من دون محكمة.
Okay, her name is Rihab Khazal. She has a kind of paralysis in her hands and legs. She got married for 4 years and a half, but she wasn't happy. She got her divorce and went back to her father's place with her daughters.
9 سنين عشت بحالة انتحار من بعد طلاقي. مرارة الحياة، ما بدي جرح بإنسان توفى والله يرحمه. ما بدي أحكي عنه إنه شو صار وليه صار فيني هيك وهيك. بقول الله يرحم بيي يعني. انتحرت 13 مرة.
9 years in my father's place. I wasn't happy at all. He died now, but during these 9 years before he died, I tried to commit suicide 13 times.
فتت على دار الصليب 3 مرات بالظلم.
I was hospitalized in Deir al-Salib 3 times because I was a little bit angry, but it's not because I didn't need Deir al-Salib. They got me inside it.
بدار الصليب انحرمت من بنتي 25 يوم. بعتقد هذا منه علاج.
They didn't let me see my daughter for 25 days.
قالت لي المعالجة النفسية اكتبي شو بتشعري بلكي بتخففي عنك. فاكتشفت عندي موهبة الكتابة وأنا ما يعني واصلة للسادس.
The psychologist in Deir al-Salib told me to write what I feel, and there I realized that I have the ability to write.
كتبت لها بنتي حياتي كلها مرار، ومن بعدك عني ومن بعدي عنك يا حتى من قلبي يا بنتي ما بقتش الحياة حياة. مرت سنة واحنا بعاد عن بعضنا يا حبيبتي يا بنتي قد ايه الحياة ظلمتنا وفرقتنا عن بعضنا وسودت الدنيا فينا. مرت الأيام أيام طويلة ودموعنا بتشكي من بعدنا ولا حد بيسأل عننا وبتحرق قلبنا. وليه يا ربي بتقاسينا في دنيتنا الغريبة وما بتسألش فينا؟ وإيه هي الحياة لما احنا يا بنتي بعاد عن بعضنا ليه يا ربي ما نقدرش نعيش الحياة المكتوبة لنا؟ ليه بنقاسي وبنسهر وبنشكي وبنبكي من بعد حبايبينا؟ وقولي يا ربي ايه قيمة الحياة لما انت يا بنتي غايبة عن عيني يا بنتي يا حتى من قلبي يا هنا الماما وضناها. قد ايه عارفة انك محتاجالي يا بنتي زي ما انا محتاجالك بالوقت اكتر من الايام اللي انقضت وياكي يا بنتي يا دمعة عينيا. مش رح تقدر تفسريها.
I would love her to say the poem, but she was saying the first poem to her daughter and her feelings toward her daughter.
اوكي، كان انتحاري انا كتير قوي لانه كنت بنتحر انه بدي اخلص من الحياة، وما كنت بعرف انه في جمعيات بتقوي بنات معنفة. يعني انه انا قطعت رقبتي، قطعت ايدي انه كذا مرة يعني. وما شاء الله انه ياخدني يعني يمكن عشان بنتي. اجا وقت امي كانت مريضة كتير بالسرطان، وقبل ما تتوفى وعدتها انه ما بقى انتحر لانه مثل ما احترق قلبي عليها انه حسيت فيها ما بدي قلب بنتي يحترق علي، بس وعدتها رح كون قوية وقد حالي. بعد ما توفت لجأت لجمعيات، هربت من البيت اوكي.
I tried to commit suicide many times with different. I once with my knife, with my hands, and I didn't know that there are some organizations for women. And before my mother death, I promised her that I would not try to commit suicide again, and I was trying to find a solution.
لجأت لجمعيات كتير بلبنان ولا جمعية قبلتنا، وطردوني كذا جمعية. وحدة طردتني بنص الليل والدنيا عم بتشتت لأنه بنتحر وما في المعدات الكافية لإلي.
She couldn't find a shelter that would accept her because she was suicidal and no shelter accepts such cases.
فقلت إنه خلص ما في ولا جمعية. رحت على البحر، كنت بدي انتحر هناك، فكتبت هو ده الألم هو ده الندم، جرحي كبير مالوش تمن، ليه يا زمن غدرت فيا ليه وبعتني بأرخص ثمن، ضاع الأمل وحلمي الكبير فيكي يا دنيا انهدم، يا المالك مدام العيشة فيكي شوك ووجع وألم، أذتني الناس ياما كتير وطعنوا قلبي الأسير وبقيت أعيط زي الطفل اليتيم، هو ده الألم هو ده الندم. هاني اجتني فكرة اني
When I couldn't find a shelter, I went to the beach and decided to put an end for my life, and there I wrote a poem.
في عندي أمل واحد بسمع عن مناهضة العنف ضد المرأة. اتصلت على 15 دليل وطلبت الرقم، وبهيك انه قالوا لي انه في بيت الحنان، فدغري انه قابلتني مدام جاكلين بالكافيه حمراء، ودغري استقبلتني من دون ما تنطر جمعة وجمعتين وثلاثة. بعتقد أنا مش إنه والله إنه لأنه قاعدة عندها عم بحكي عنها. مدام جاكلين ما بنقلها مدام جاكلين، بنقلها ماما، اللي أنا مش كمسؤولة جمعية بتعتبرنا إنه نحن أولادها. ونحن بالوقت اللي توفت أمي الله بعت لي 3 أميات، إنه المسؤولين إنه اللي بالليل اللي بالنهار. ماما جاكلين ساعدتني كتير. كنت باخد بدار الصليب عم بفسر
somebody gave me the number of Beit Hanan, and when I called them, Dr. Jacqueline saw me in a cafe and took me to Beit Hanan directly. She was so nice to us. She was like our mother, and even the house mothers in the night and the day, they were all my mother.
13 حبة دواء كانوا يعطوني بدار الصليب.
I was giving 13 pills in Dar es-Salaam.
وهذا ما بتبطليه أبداً طول العمر.
And they told me that I should not stop the pills at all.
بظرف شهر.
In 1 month.
بظرف شهر عند بيت الحنان اللي ما عنده المعدات الكافية كأطباء، بس عنده المعدات الكافية اللي هي الحنان والعاطفة والأمان. قدرت تخلصني مسؤولة هونيك بنهار بنعيط لماما ماري من 13 حبة دواء بظرف شهر واحد.
In 1 month in Beit Hanan, our house mother and the staff in Beit Hanan helped me to stop the 13 pills.
بيرجع لبنتي. قدرت ماما جاكلين انه نجيبها لعنا بعد يعني عناء كبير 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 انه بنتي خلص ما في امل منها انه ترجع لعندي.
About my daughter, she was with her father and she didn't think that she will have her or she will get her back one day. And Dr. Jacqueline helped her get her daughter back.
مدام جاكلين ماما جاكلين هلا حطيتها بنبع الصفا عم تدفع عليها انه يعني بعتقد بلاوي كرمال انه بدها اعادة تأهيل.
And Dr. Jacqueline put her daughter in Naba Safa in a good school there to rehabilitate her and
سينتيا شماس المعالجة النفسية اللي بعتبرها مش دكتورة بعتبرها أخت لإلي وصديقة لأنه بروح كانت عند معالجات نفسيات إنه بيهزوا براسهم إنه بتحكي بس بيهزوا براسهم بس هي كانت كتير يعني بتاخد وبتعطي وبتعطينا حلول يعني.
The psychologist Cynthia was a good friend for me because I already saw many psychologists, but Cynthia was a good friend to me because she gave me advices and she helped me get through my problems.
في ماما سميرة بتجي جمعة سبت أحد بالليل كمان أمي كتير حنونة وبتخاف علينا كتير وكتير بتساعدنا يعني في عطف في حنان بقلب البيت وقسم على مساعدة وفي إخلاص من التنين للخميس كمان إنه لما نسخن أو شيء إنه يعني بنلاقي مثل حضن حنون لنا.
She was talking about the house mothers, the day shift, night shift, and the weekend shift. That they were all like her mothers because they were so nice to her.
يمكن كانت شوي ماما جاكلين عم بتقلب بهذا شو اسمه شفت صورتي من سنتين قلت معقولة هاي أنا يمكن ما انتبهتوا لأنه أنا بقلب هلا.
She was talking about her pictures 2 years ago in Beit Hanan. She wasn't the same one. She's a complete different person now.
أنا أساساً تعلمت الطبخ من أمي طباخة ماهرة. ماما جاكلين إنه قد ما لقيت شغل شغلتني عندها بقلب الجمعية طباخة.
My mother taught me how to cook, and when I couldn't find a job, Mama Jacqueline let me work as a cook in Beit Hanan.
عم دور على شغل تاني لأقدر كفي حالي كفي بنتي لأنه ما بدي بنتي تعيش اللي عشته أنا. بحب أطمع لشيء أكبر. أنا كنت بدي أنتج كتابي عن قصة حياتي بس للأسف إنه ما كان معي التكلفة يعني لحتى أنتجه.
I'm trying to find another job next to my job in Beit Hanan. And I have a book that I want to publish, but I don't have enough money to publish my book.
ماما جاكلين بتعتبرني لإلي إنه كتير عندي إنه ما جيت على الجمعية لآكل وأشرب ونام. عندي طموحات كتيرة نفسي حققها. بدي حتى إنه كان بدها تسافرني على أمريكا لأنه في شغل إلي هونيك عند خيا بشغل طباخة يعني بمطعم بس المشكلة إنه بنتي ما فيني أتركها وروح وجوزي مش طليقي يعني مش رح يمضي على باسبورها لحتى إنه عطانا إياها بس لنعلمها بس مش رح يمضي إنه لتسافر معي. بلجأ بدي أقول لجميع الولايات أو لجميع شو بيقولوا هيدا لجميع البلدان يعني. أنا تعذبت بالحياة كتير ونفسي أرتاح نفسي بنتي تعيش من دون خوف.
Dr. Jacqueline found me a job in USA in a restaurant, but I couldn't travel because of my daughter because my husband will not accept to sign on her passport so she could leave the country.
أنا الإعاقة اللي عندي عجزتني، أنا ما في أشتغل بمحل ثياب، ما في أشتغل غير طباخة. إذا بدك تشتغل مثلا، إذا بدي أشتغل بمطعم طباخة بدك توقفي لحتى إنه وقف على إجري ما فيني كتير، يعني إنه بحرك شمال ويمين بس إنه توقفني من دون ما أحرك دمي، هذا الشيء بيوجع لي إجري.
I cannot work everything because of my case with my legs and hands, so I am tired and I need to find a good job that that's good with my case because I got tired quickly.
كان نفسي قبل ما يموت بيي من 4 أشهر إني أنتج كتاب وفرجيه إنه أنا ماني البنت المجنونة اللي انحطت بدار الصليب.
I wanted to publish my book before my father's death because I wanted to tell him that I'm not the crazy woman that you sent me to Dar es Salaam.
أنا ما إلي معين بهالحياة، أنا يتيمة الأب والأم. بس الله عوض علي بماما جاكلين. بس بتطلع لبعدين إنه ولوين حياتي إنه أنا وبنتي. يعني أنا ما فيني، أنا نفسي إنه يصير شيء، ما بحب إنه ضلني قاعدة إنه شيء إنه خلاص هيك إنه بحب أطمح للأكبر.
I don't have a father or a mother anymore, but God gave me Mrs. Jacqueline, and I have ambitions, and I hope that I will.
أوكي بيي وأمي ماتوا بس في عالم كتير إنه نفسي برهنهم إنه أنا ماني مجنونة.
My parents died, but I want to prove to other people, like my family, that I'm not crazy anymore.
طموحي كبير بس ما بتطلع على شيء أكتر مني. بتطلع على أشياء خفيفة يعني. أشياء هيك عيش أنا وبنتي مرتاحة، أجيب لها كل طلباتها مع إنه المجابي يعني إنه الشيء القليل مش الكتير. بشكر ماما جاكلين وبشكر ماما ماري وبشكر سينتيا جماس على ثقتهم فيي، وبعرف اني عندهم انا انه بالدنيا يعني، وبعرف انه بنتهم، وبعرف انه قعدتي بالجمعيه انه لو طول العمر ما بيقولوا لا، بس حابه ارتاح انا وبنتي، وحدا انه ما خلي بنتي عندها الخوف انه بدي اخذها وسافر من هون، لانه تعبت. تصور انه تحط اعلان بالوسيط تطلب طباخه تجيد الطبخ اللبناني فبدقوا لك كثير على انك شيء ثاني. انه تعبت من المطلقه هون عنا صعبه المنع، يعني صعبه كلمه مطلقه، فوين ما بروح ما بلاقي شغل، بلاقي شيء ثاني، فبعدني صابره وساكته، وبعدني على امل انه حدا يوقف معي. انا ما بحب انه حدا يستعطيني او شيء، انا بدي اشتغل كرمال بنتي بعرق جبيني. وشكرا لكم كتير 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 انه سمعتوني، والشكر لاستاذ الوزير انه حضرتك تكرمت وجيت لهون، وشكر خاص 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 لأطيب قلب وأحن أم من بعد أمي ماما جاكلين.
Thank you very much, Riha. I'd now like to introduce Ms. Lydia Farah, who is a lawyer and legal consultant since 2005, and she volunteers for the NGO Kafa, Enough Violence and Exploitation Against Women, since 2009, where she provides legal consultation and also services for women survivors of violence. And she's had training in particular related to CEDAW, that's the Convention on Elimination Against Discrimination Against Women, specifically in the Lebanese courts, and she's been involved with national workshops on that. She's also represented Lebanon at the Arab Women's Organization workshop held in Cairo earlier this year in March 2013, which was working on an Arab strategy to fight violence against women in the Arab world. And she's the author of Women Victims of War, which was a legal study on how to protect women during war according to international law and also international tribunals. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Okay. Now, why CAFA is represented here, let me please start by a small briefing. CAFA, Enough Violence and Exploitation Against Women, is a Lebanese NGO, non-profit organization established in 2005 by a group of human rights activists. CAFA's mission is to work towards achieving gender equality, eliminating all kinds of discrimination against women, fighting all forms of gender-based violence and exploitation against women and children, advocating for legal reform and change of policies and practices, influencing public opinion and raising awareness, especially among the women, and empowering women, providing legal, social, and psychological services for those who are victims of domestic violence. And we have also a branch for take care of the domestic workers, as Mr. Nahas said, because there's a big problem. They are facing a lot of abuse and discrimination in our society, unfortunately. Before starting with what is the legal situation in Lebanon concerning the domestic violence, let me please give you a small definition. What is exactly the domestic violence in legal terms? Violence against women means any act of gender-based violence that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to women, including threats occurring in public or in private life. This definition was adopted by the UN General Assembly on 1993. The resolution number is 48/104, called Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And one of these forms of violence is the physical or sexual or psychological violence occurring in the family, including battering, sexual abuse of female in household. This is what we call the domestic violence. It could be marital rape, female genital mutilation, murder, or any acts harmful to a woman. Unfortunately, studies shows that domestic violence against women is a global spread crime that may affect women around the world. Therefore, the international community, the UN agencies and organizations had expressed in the past years until nowadays great fear of this denounced crime and call all the states to work for achieving gender equality, protecting women from violence, and eliminating all forms of discrimination against women. The states are invited to implement the recommendations set forth in each of the following charts and conventions and declarations, as, for example, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights for Women, CEDAW Convention, which is the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women, Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. In Lebanon, our experience shows that domestic violence is a problem that affects women of all backgrounds, regardless of their religion or socioeconomic situation or level of education or age or cultural background. It has been considered in our society as a private issue or an internal family affair, a taboo that is not forbidden to talk about loudly. Lately, this view began to change because the public awareness that women's organizations are working and because women looked over to the seriousness of the violence that leads sometimes to the death of the victim. The legal situation in Lebanon. Currently, in Lebanon, we don't have a law or an official action plan that protects women from domestic violence. It is not addressed in our criminal code. The Lebanese institutions, both parliament and government, didn't show before any serious action towards elaborating a new law that protects women from domestic violence. The subject was not on their agenda for many years before. The excuses were, okay, they were saying we don't have domestic violence in Lebanon. It's few cases, not more. It's a family issue. It has to do with the religious court, and it refers to all matter and court system that refers all matters pertaining to personal status to our religious court, and there is no domestic violence in Lebanon. So we show them that we have a lot of number of cases, and this is very common in our society. The penal code or the criminal code and our personal status laws do not contain provisions that protect women from domestic violence. We cannot ignore that the Lebanese criminal code contains some articles that punishes crimes like murder, physical abuse, rape, sexual harassment, incest, etc. But this code do not include special provisions concerning the domestic violence against women, and do not include legal measures to protect women from such violence and prevent such violence. Addressing this protection gap, CAFA took the initiative to start a legislative reform and prepared in 2007 with the help of a steering committee of specialists like lawyers, judges, human rights activists, a draft law to protect women from family violence. The draft law will be a part of the Lebanese criminal law. The new draft will not only criminalize all forms of family violence against women, but also include several provisions to protect and empower women and girls within the family, such as provisions on restraining orders, reporting violence, securing accommodation and medical expenses, safeguard the privacy of the family, and ensuring the establishment of specialized family units within the ISF, Internal Security Forces, and before the public prosecutions. The bill included the following legal reforms. At first, it criminalized physical, mental, sexual abuse against women in household and marital rape. Allow domestic violence victims to report abuses and protect their privacy. Permit the victims to lodge a legal complaint against the perpetrator free of charge. Install a special public prosecutor in each of the 6 governorates in Lebanon to receive complaints and investigate cases of violence. Establish special units within the police offices to investigate in domestic violence cases and to deal with victims in a right way. Increase the punishments for offenders, including fines and prison terms. Allow the courts to order rehabilitation for the perpetrators. Force the perpetrators to compensate victims financially by providing the victim and her children safe housing and paying for medical expenses incurring from the violence and for the alimony. Require public and private health care providers to report cases in which they treated women from domestic violence. Allow the courts to take some provision measures to separate between the victim and the perpetrator and avoid the risk of danger during the legal process. This draft of law or bill has been adopted and approved by the Lebanese government in 2010. During the mandate of Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri, and it has been transferred to the Parliament and to be reviewed by a special parliamentary committee. During the review made by the Parliament members, the project of law faces some distortions and modifications as a result of some pressures and interventions made by religious leaders and some political parties. CAFA, who drafted and promoted this bill, joined by a coalition of women's NGO, organized a lobby to press the member of the parliament to adopt the law on violence as it is, without modification that may affect the essence of the law. In fact, the original draft made by CAFA and the one that was adopted by the government was modified by the parliamentary committee. The first modification was the name of the law. The law was entitled Law for the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence. Now the title is Law for the Protection of Women and All Family Members from Domestic Violence. One of the modifications made was we were demanding the criminalization of the marital rape, but they also modified this text. The new draft criminalizes the physical assault or harm that may affect during or in purpose or having sex or during the relationship between husband and wife. On the 22nd of July 2013, the draft law for protection of women from domestic violence was approved by the Joint Parliamentary Committee. Now we are still waiting for the final step, because this draft, to be a law, needs the approval from the majority of the General Assembly of the Parliament. And as we know, the Parliament do not make any sessions these days, so we're still waiting. The struggle for the protection of women from family violence will not end even if the law was approved officially, because this law will have no sense if it was not applied well by all those who are concerned. That's why CAFA, for example, started months ago trainings with judges, police officers, lawyers, etc., on how to protect women victims of domestic violence. We signed, for example, an MOU between CAFA and the ISF a few months ago, and a selected number of police officers were trained to deal with victims of violence during investigation. And there is a circular that is released lately by the ISF General Manager in May 2013. And this is very important to know that now we have new procedures and a new way of treatment for women during the investigation in the police stations. And we furnished some special room where the police officers will receive the women victim of violence in privacy. So in addition, CAFA took the initiative to furnish some, I was talking about that. For example, today afternoon, there is a ceremony in the ISF headquarters with the Ministry of Interior Affairs, where we will distribute certificate for the police officers who follow this training, and now they are competent enough to deal with domestic violence cases and taking the measures and the protection measures to save the women from any kind of domestic violence. Thank you. This is what I have prepared for today. If you have any question, I'm ready to answer. Thank you.
Well, thank you to all of our speakers. And now I'd like to open the floor for questions. If you could say your name, that would be helpful.
عادل قرطاس وزير الزراعة السابق. يعني أولاً بحب إني أشكر معهد إسام فارس للسياسات العامة والشؤون على هالمبادرة التي معالجة موضوع مهم جدا للمجتمع اللبناني ككل. أولاً بحب إني أيد الشيء اللي تفضل فيه معالي الوزير شرب النحاس، إنه ضرورة إصدار قانون خاص بالعنف ضد المرأة وغير المرأة، الخدام إلى آخره. والأخت شددت على بكلمتها الأخيرة عن الموضوع. بس يا جماعة ما تنسوش إنه نحن في مجتمع ذكوري في لبنان. هلا الأخت أشرتي إنه اللجان المشتركة وافقت على القانون هذا.
مبدئيا نعم.
لما يصدر القانون.
صحيح.
يصدر القانون بدنا ننتظر.
أكيد.
يعني بس حتى لو صدر القانون حضرتك محامية.
نعم.
بتعرفي انه قضية الإثبات في في هالأمور هيدي. نحن في مجتمع ذكوري في لبنان. قضية الإثبات صعبة جدا جدا، لذلك ما بيبقى علينا إلا الشيء اللي تفضلت فيه أخت جاكلين حجار. المجتمع المدني في لبنان عنده مهمة عظيمة جدا لحتى يقوم فيها، بس أنا بتساءل إنه بالإضافة للمجتمع المدني والمجتمع الأهلي، شو دور وزارة الشؤون الاجتماعية في لبنان؟ شو دور وزارة العدل؟ شو دور وزارة التربية؟ إلى آخره. شو دور الكنيسة؟ شو دور الجامع؟ كلهم لهم ادوار لازم يقوموا فيها. بس في سؤال بدي اسالك اياه اخت جاكلين، هالشيء اللي تفضلتي فيه شيء عظيم جدا وبهنيكي عليه. طيب من الناحيه الماديه كيف عم تقدروا تتوصلوا تقوموا بكل هالاعمال هيدي؟ الفندنج منين عم تجيبوه؟ ما اشرت اليها هيك. شكرا.
Maybe I should say something that I didn't introduce into the PowerPoint presentation, that I believe that God is the answer to many of these things. And whenever we were in a tight spot, we prayed. And money came sometimes at the last minute when we had nothing really to eat. You can ask, at times we couldn't pay for food. Also, we have very good friends who somehow, feel with us and pray for us and such. And until now, we have been all right, relatively. But you're right, money-wise, it's becoming harder, yes. Because of the situation, all these refugees, Syrian refugees, are creating a big problem for the NGOs. Because the money doesn't come to us anymore. Okay.
We'll be giving money for food only for the beneficiaries, but we applied maybe 8-9 months ago, شؤون اجتماعية. They have not approved the application yet. Ultimately, they give something like 30 or 35,000 pounds per beneficiary per day to cover the food.
But we're still waiting.
It's been months and months.
اوكي كمان انه احيانا كثير ما بيجي لها تبرعات على الجمعيه، فمدام جاكلين انه تطمني لو مش عم بحكي هيك لانه عشان هي ما كان جاي تبرعات للعالم، وتكت تكه وحده انه لبنتي $800 انه اللي بيقربني ما كان جاي تبرعات ابدا. انا رحت على الشؤون الاجتماعيه من شي تقريبا شهر، قلت لهم وضعي بالكامل وهيك، قالوا لي ادرسي شي مشروع صغير تقدري تعيشي منه ونحن بنرفعه للوزير لحتى نقدر. قلت لهم انه هيك انه في جمعيات كثيره ما استقبلتني وهيك. قالت لي انه هيدي اللي ما عم نعطيها انه بتستقبلك، واللي عم نعطيهم انه ما استقبلوكي، انه انا ما بدي جرب فلان وعلتان، بس لو ما استقبلتني مدام جاكلين وهني طردوني، انا وين كنت؟ اول شغله كنت رايحه انتحر لانه على اساس ما بقى في جمعيات بلبنان. يعني او كنت بالشارع انه لو ماما جاكلين، وماما جاكلين مش مسؤولة جمعية.
بدي اسال سؤال، عندك اقارب؟
عندي اقارب، عندي اخوات،
عائلة؟
عندي عائلة كثير كبيرة.
ما حدا سافر؟ ما حدا سام؟
أنا بيي توفى من 3 أشهر.
بعرف الأب والأم بس
من 3 أشهر، أنا لي 2 سنين بالجمعية. أنا لجأت لجمعية لأنه حطوني بدار الصبي.
عمي، خالي، جد؟
ما لي حدا غير أنا وماما جاكلين. عندك فيه بس ما إلي.
ما بدي.
مش سبورت، بالعكس حتى الولد
يعني بيعرفوني إنه أنا معاقة، إنه أنا ما إلي معين، فما حدا بيعيني غير ماما. ماما اللي موتت.
Sorry, I have to Leila Abalan, coming from IFI. But just first of all, a comment about it is a masculine society, patriarchal and everything, but the problem is that women are still defined within the circle of a family. So we always ask if she has a family or not, which shouldn't be the case to begin with, because we are individuals, regardless of our family or not, and we should be empowered as individuals without what family we belong to or not. My other question is just a technical one for Mr. Shab Nahas. When you said that, you said ليش في جمعيات نسائية, like why is it factionalized? What I don't understand if that's a problem or not. I see it as it could be taken as a rights-based approach because women are really still marginalized in society. So if you look at NGOs outside Lebanon or in the world, you still have NGOs that ask for rights for African Americans or immigrants. So I don't think the factionalization is necessary. I think the problem is the fact of women NGOs being supported and listened to by women. So if we look around, it's mostly women in this room, and we're kind of preaching to the choir. So why is this a problem? And I'm not sure if I misunderstood it or you meant it that way.
نعم تفضلي في على قصة إنه في مطالبات وبتأسس جمعيات وإلى آخره. أنا عندي رأي طبعا بالموضوع. أنا برأيي إنه الجمعيات أخذت هالحجم الكبير لأنه تراجعت الحياة السياسية بالعالم كله أساسا. يعني إنه هاي خبرية NGO وإلى آخره هي بديل عن حياة سياسية سليمة، لأنه نحن مثلا لناخذ بلبنان وأمريكا زي الشيء يعني مش أحسن بكثير. يعني بيصعب عليه كثير الواحد يعرف شو مواقف الفعلية تبع الأطراف السياسية من الخيارات المجتمعية الأساسية. ما عندهم رأي أو نفس الشيء أو كذا، وبالتالي التنازل أو الانحسار الحراك السياسي أدى إلى جعل هالساحة تنشأ فيها ما سمي جمعيات غير حكومية. بعد حتى الاسم شو يعني جمعيات غير حكومية؟ يعني حتى صار في أكثر من هيك كثير. بتعرفوا هالموضوع، نحن نعمل محاضرة على أمر ثاني اللي هو استغلال هذه الحركة لتصوير إنه العمل السياسي شيء مقرف وشيء مجوي وإلى آخره. ما بدنا نتبحر كثير بهالمسألة. تفضلتي بسؤال ثاني هو إنه مسألة ليش في جمعيات. أنا كنت مشارك بالحكومة اللي مرق فيها اقتراح القانون هذا، ومرق كمان نقاش يعني ما حنشرط بس ملافت هذا على قضية قانون الانتخاب النسبية ومسألة كوتا النسائية. طيب صار بقى نقاش طويل عريض وأجلدت مجلس النواب بعدين، مش هون المفاجأة. يعني المسألة هي التالية، إنه غالبية الجمعيات النسائية وأكاد أكون يعني ما عم بظلم كثير إذا قلت كلهم، كان مثل الأحزاب السياسية بحب أسمعهم رأي بأي موضوع غير إنه بدنا حصة للنسون. عندهم رأي بشيء، يعني عندهم رأي مثلا بأي شغلة، عندهم رأي بنظام الضرائب، عندهم رأي بشو دور الدولة، عندهم رأي بالنظام التعليمي، عندهم رأي بأي شيء. يعني كمان مرة نحن إذا كان بدنا نرجع نستنسخ مع الجمعيات النسائية المهزلة تبع الحصص والكوتايات، ما نفس الشيء. ما الأحزاب السياسية عندنا يلي بالحكومة ويلي بالمعارضة يعني بتحدى أي واحد يعرف شو رأيهم بسلسلة الرتب والرواتب وبالنظام الضريبي، ولا واحد فيك تعرفي له رأي. وبالتالي هيدي ما فيها تكون حجة رحنا جمعيات نسائية وبالتالي كل المسائل الثانية نحن ما خصنا فيها بس بدنا كوتا. يعني ما لازم هيدا الجهد يروح ينصرف بهالطريقة.
أول شيء الجمعيات انوجدت. لا خلينا نوضحها بالعربي معلش أريح لي. الجمعيات انوجدت لأنه كان في عجز وغياب لأجهزة الدولة. يعني اليوم بكل دول العالم تنصت المجتمع المدني عم بيجي كحل بديل عن غياب وتقصير من الجهات الرسمية. يعني مثلا وظيفة مجلس النواب هو يشرع ويسن القوانين، أو وظيفة الحكومة هي توضع مشاريع قوانين وتحيلها لمجلس النواب. ما حدا اهتم خلال كل السنوات الماضية لا بمجلس النواب المتعاقب كل يعني المجالس المنتخبة ولا بمجالس الوزراء المتعاقبة بهذا الموضوع. طب اجت الجمعية اخذت على عاتقها انها هي يعني تصيغ او تعد مشروع قانون، لانه لقيت انه في غياب او في تقصير من قبل الجهات المختصة بالدولة. هلا شو دور الجمعيات؟ بالجمعيات في تخصص، يعني ما فيها جمعية تاخذ قضايا المجتمع كلها بتضيع بالموضوع، ومثل ما بيقولوا اذا كترت الاشياء عليها ما بعد فيها تركز على قضية معينة. مشان هيك في جمعيات تختص بحقوق الأطفال بتتابع شؤون الطفل، في جمعيات تختص بحقوق المعوقين بتتابع لهم أمورهم، في جمعيات تعنى بشؤون بقضايا المرأة وحقوق المرأة. وفي موضوع الضرائب والحقوق العمال، هيدي المفروض النقابات العمالية هي تلحقها، مش كل الجمعيات بالبلد. أكيد نحن كأفراد أو كأشخاص منضوين تحت منظمات وجمعيات لنا رأي بكل شيء بيصير بالبلد، بس نحن مش أحزاب سياسية تنطرح مواضيع بالسياسة، نحن مش نقابات عمالية لنناقش أمور العمل وحقوق العمال. في كل بالبلد نحن في عنا نقابات وفي عنا جمعيات وفي عنا ناس متخصصة، كل واحد عم بيقوم بدوره. بالنهاية هذا كله بيكمل بعضه لنبني مجتمع أفضل وأحسن. بالنسبة لسؤال مسيو كورتاس بخصوص دور المجتمع المدني وطريقة عمل الوزارات، المجتمع المدني عم نشتغل معه كثير وتحسن، يعني اللي عم نشوفه انه صار في وعي اكثر خصوصا بين الجيل الجديد جيل الشباب. بس نحن بلبنان عندنا مشاكل، يعني اولاد المدينه غير اولاد الارياف، المناطق تختلف، المدن تختلف، نظره كل شخص حسب بيئته وتربيته والجو اللي عايش فيه لقضايا مماثله بتختلف. فما فينا عم نجي نتعامل مع تلاميذ الجامعات، عم نشتغل مع المجتمع المدني، مع المهن الحرة، عم نطلع بوسائل الإعلام هون دورة كثير كبير اللي هي تنشر التوعية، لأن هي قادرة توصل لأكبر عدد ممكن من الأشخاص بالمجتمع. الوزارات عندها دور كثير كبير، وزارة العدل مساهمة من خلال المدعى العام التمييزي، من خلال جروب من القضاة، يعني هن متطوعين وعم يشتغلوا. كان عندنا مبادرات فردية كثير ناجحة أخذوها بعض القضاة على عاتهم، أصدروا أحكام ضجت البلد فيها من قد ما كانت متقدمة وتراعي حقوق المرأة وحقوق الإنسان بشكل كبير. بس نحن ما بدنا البلد يضل ماشي على مبادرة شخص أو يعني نجاح بمكان معين، بدنا هالحالة تعمم على المؤسسات، المؤسسة القضائية تتبنى هذا النهج، مؤسسات الدولة تنخرط بهذا النهج. بعدين لبنان هو دولة فاعلة ومنظمة وفاعلة ومنتمية للأمم المتحدة وتلتزم بكل شرعة حقوق الإنسان وكل المعاهدات الدولية. لبنان مصادق على اتفاقية سيداو، لبنان مفروض في كونه وفقا لكل هالمعايير يتحرك ليكون مثل على مستوى عالمي مثل بقية الدول يلي كمان كانت تعاني سابقا من مشاكل من هالنوع، ومع الأيام تطور أداءها وتحسنت، والقوانين مع الأيام تتجدد، يعني دائما حسب الحاجة، ما في شيء ثابت. نجرب.
Poliana Jaha, public administration student. Can I just start by saying I'm extremely happy to be here because, as was said in the introduction, this topic has not been tackled in the AUB. I have two questions. My first question is, why do you think, Mr. Shaib al-Nahas, why do you think this topic is still not a priority on the political agenda? And my second question is, and Dr. Jacqueline can answer this if you'd like, what is the role of educational institutions in possibly taking preventative measures or spreading awareness? Because I strongly believe that the men who grow up to beat their wives or abuse their housekeepers they have a huge problem, and that potentially started at a very young age. So what can schools and universities do to help eliminate that and prevent it?
Thank you. بما خص انه ليش هالموضوع ما له صفة أولوية، حاولت أقول أنا أنه بالنسبة للرأي الغالب، ومش عم نحكي 55% أو 60%، قريب لل100%، إنه هذه المسألة منا أكثر من عدد والدها الأستاذة، منا أكثر من بعض الحالات الشاذة يلي فيها افراط وكذا وهيدول ناس زعران وما عندهم مشاكل والى اخره، منا معتبره. ليش؟ لانه على الرغم مثلا بدي اجرب اوضح لانه سؤالك بيصيب على مفصل اساسي، مش معناتها انه هالناس كافراد هن ما بيتألموا او ما بيتاثروا بحالات مثل سيدي رحاب وكذا، بس الاقتناع الاساسي هو انه في منظومة مجتمعية متمسكين فيها يلي هي
قائمة على تراتبية معينة، يعني العائلة واسم العائلة وحرمة العائلة وشرف العائلة والديانة وكل الأخبار هدول مع بعضهم بيشكلوا الإطار الفكري الغالب بمجتمعنا، على عكس الاشياء اللي بتمضيها دولتنا، لانه بتمضي شو ما كان دولتنا، بتعرف يعني بيمضوا شو ما كان، من صنف يلي قالته الطالبة هلا من شوي انه حقوق انسان وحقوق فرد. مش صحيح، يعني بيمضوا من باب الرياء والكذب. هذا بتعرفي ما حدا مصدق هالحكي لما بيمضوه اساسا. وبالتالي يجي الواحد يقول انه في بالحجة الشكلية التزام من قبل الدولة بهالمبادئ الدستورية والمواثيق وإلى آخره، هيدي وحدة من وسائل الحركشة والنضال السياسي والضغط، لأنه إذا فلتيهم لحالهم ما حدا قبضهم هدول كلهم، إنه هدول يابا واجبات، إنه قالوا لنا مضوا مضينا، ما إلها معنى بذهنهم، ما حدا قبضها جد. هاي القصة بتاتا بتاتا بتاتا. طيب هلأ من هون بدي ارجع اذا بتسمحي لي ردك للبرايورتي. هيدي البرايورتي اصطنعت من فعل نشاط قاموا فيه عالم تيصطنعوه، واستفادوا من هالشي تكتيكيا من وجود معاهدات جديدة وسيداو وكذا وجو عالمي. هيدي مناورة تكتيكية لاختراق انتظام عام. أنا هيك بفهمها، وبالعكس برافو عليهم ونحن معهم بالقصة، مش هون النقاش. بس إنه عموم الناس يا لطيف شو ملاقي هالقصة مهمة؟ لا أكيد لا. هلا
ناس وناس يعني
خم يلي معني شيء يلي معني إيه. بس اليوم إذا جيتي أنت حاولتي تشوفي الرأي العام والسياسيين يلي بيحاولوا يتعاملوا مع الرأي العام، يا أما ليبيعوه معنويات يا أما ليستوعبوه كذا، هل بسلم أولوياتهم هذه المسألة؟ أكيد لا، معلش أكيد لا. هلأ في شيء تاني كمان مهم، إنه هيدي المسألة اللي من باب هالمناورة حققت اختراق لا بأس به، كمان هيدي عم تطرح شغلة تانية. يعني تفضلتي شوي وشرحتي هلأ منيح القانونية. هي وين المشكلة؟ مش انه القانون اللبناني اللي نحن ترجمناه عن الفرنسوية يعني وجيبوه قبل الاسبانيين ترجموه كمان عن الموديل الفرنساوي القديم، ما هو بيقولوا ممنوع واحد يخبط واحد تاني. انه مش هون المشكلة،
موجود.
مش هون المشكلة. المشكلة وين؟ المشكلة انه العلاقة الفعلية ضمن الأسرة تؤدي الى حجب السلطة العامة ما خصكن، وإقامة اختلال بميزان القوى. انه وين بدها تروح هذه بفك لها رقبتها، شوف كيف بجيب بيا بيضربها الى اخره الى اخره. وبالتالي بحكم اقصاء شرعيه الدوله خارج اطار العائله واطار الطائفه، ما ذات الشيء وذات المنطق، انه الدوله ما خصها، عادي شغله بيناتنا، والعلاقه بين الافراد اختلال ميزان القوى الفعلي الى حد انه ما انا بلقط الاولاد وما بدي اعيشها وبشحطها والى اخره، بتخلص هي ما بتطالب بحقها، منا مقتنعة حتى انه حقها. مشان هيك ذكرت لكم الامثله بساحات اخرى ذات الشيء يلي هو هلا هون قضيه انه استصدار قانون عمل سياسي جريء وبده ثبات كان وعناد، لانه ما كانت بهالسهوله تم في اختراق. بس انه مش انه تغيرت الصورة، مش بهالبساطة. يعني قليل رح يكونوا الحالات يلي رح يستخدموا هذا القانون لبناء شكاوي، قليل، ومن هالشكاوي قليل يلي رح يوقعوا على قضاة أوادم وعندهم الشجاعة الأدبية والفكرية ليواجهوا. يعني بعد القصة طويلة الحكاية.
Yeah, you're right that we live in a world of violence. And all the children now are so steeped in this violence. And violence breeds more violence. And when they see their father and mother, the way they deal with each other, you know, the father hitting the mother or hitting the maid or whatever, they think it is normal. And this is why I was talking about going to the schools and giving lectures to the children and trying to make them realize that hitting other people is not acceptable. There are other ways to make them change their mind or to convince them of something. But unfortunately, most people feel that the only way is through violence. And this is very painful to realize, really. Yeah.
You're talking about education and teaching the children. Before we teach the children, we have to teach the teachers. There was a seminar where the style of rebuking and disciplining children is extremely severe and unacceptable, where they leave the children to kneel on pebbles, and you have all sorts of more or less torture for the children. So we have to reach the children, the teachers as well as the children and the families. Two, it is really very important when there is a law. How is the law being implemented? We have the statute laws, which is covered according to the religion. When are we going to have a civil law that will cover everybody and be treated? And then who is going to monitor the implementation and the execution of such laws? I mean, in the presence, and please don't, I'm not that violent, but in the absence of a reputable legal system, how can you really get your right? If a woman is beaten, if she receives a letter saying you are divorced, how is she going to get her right? Or if the whole family is against her. I mean, the mother at home that protects the violence of her husband or the violence of her son against the female in the family. I mean, we have a culture that needs to be basically changed, the mentality to be different. And I mean, there is a lot to be done at all levels. It's not only Mama Hanan, it's not only Kafa. In a society where we have violence predominant, where we have shooting, where we have arms in the hands of everybody, how do you deal with that? There is something that needs to be done from the basics of it. Thank you.
We all know that, okay, what you have said is right, 100%, and we have a lot of difficulties and, in our society. And we know that maybe someone don't think, who cares about women's right now, and there's explosions and maybe there's war or something. But it's all related to each other by a way or another. Yes, we need a lot of changes in religious codes, but the problem is that a lot are confusing between what is domestic violence and what is a family issue of family matters. Religious courts are competent to take the to deal with the cases concerning divorce, maybe custody, in a relationship, in a marriage relationship. So they had not to do with a crime. Domestic violence is a crime, like stealing, like murder, like every other crime in our criminal code, like drug trafficking and everything else. So it's a crime. It's civil law. It has to do with the civil law, not with the religious court. And this is what we need to explain for everybody. Even we had a lot of difficulty in the government and in the parliament concerning this issue, because what is the problem in the project of law that why it takes 3 years now, from 2010 till nowadays, and approved that? Because there was a lot of discussion concerning this relationship between the religious court and the civil courts. But it's a crime. Domestic violence is a crime. It should be criminalized. There should be punishment for those who are for the perpetrators, and according to the religious code, and we need a lot of reform concerning our personal status, because we have around 15 laws concerning the personal status in Lebanon. The Christians have their own, the Muslims have their own. So even in this in the religious court, we are struggling and we are working to do some reforms in the religious court and in concerning the custody and raising the age of custody for the mother and other issues. So, do you have something else? Sorry, maybe I forgot something.
Sorry, can I just add?
That we need to change our full status.
Yes, but it's hard work.
State,
we need to
state, and I think our minister agrees with me because it is really not. عم نرقع هون وهون. ما في عندك هالمسؤولين بالبرلمان ولا شو اسمه يلي بالفعل ياخذوا بايدهم ويشتغلوا ويغيروا. نحن زباله بالنسبه لنا ما لنا وجود، بيجوا بيدخلوا على بابنا لما بدهم التصويت، الحق علينا اللي نصوت لهم.
والله ستنا عفوا، من جمعه كان في انتخابات طلابيه بالجامعه معك؟ لا معلش، حرقوا ديننا ما اختلفنا، انا ما قدرت اوصل على الصف، بس هذا حديث ثاني. طيب كيف كانوا مفروزين الشباب تحت؟ مثل الغنم يلي برا ذاك الشيء، اوكي مش احسن بتاتا يعني، اوكي بس للفتة هلا لانه ما انه احسن يعني، ايه وهدول دافعين عليهم اهلهم عشرات الوف الدولارات تفوتين لهم، فالصوا مثل بعضها يعني، اذا نظريه التعليم مش هي ما انه مثل ما قلتي مثل بعضها، اللي عم بيعلم بيشبه هدوليك شو هو يعني. لنرجع للنقطة تفضلتي فيها، بس حب بشير لشغلة، العنف له مش بس له دور رمزي يلي بيمارسه بيفرجي انه هو عنده سلطة، بس العنف له جدوى فعال. العنف يعني مش بس قضية هيك، لا العنف مجدي، مش عن غشمن الناس بتمارس العنف. العنف بيخلي يلي بيتلقى العنف يوصل لمحل يرضخ على كل القياسات، ضمن العائلة، ضمن العائلة، ضمن المؤسسة، ضمن بلد وبين الدول. يعني مش صحيح انه العنف هيدا شيء تخلف وبطل على الموضة، لا العنف جزء اساسي ما بينفك من الممارسات المنطقية العقلانية تبع الافراد والمؤسسات والدول، وبالتالي مش نتعجب انه في عنف، العنف فيه ورح يضل فيه. المسألة لا ما عليك في واحد يكون طوباوي انه اوكي بالجنة ما بعرف شو في، ما حدا خبرنا راح واجا يعني، بس انه هون إذا الواحد بده يكون بده نتعامل مع العنف كجزء مكون من العلاقات الأفراد والمؤسسات والدول، وبالتالي المسألة مشان هيك في قانون جزائي وإلا لشو؟ يعني المسألة هون بالتحديد هي كيف تدخل السلطات العامة لصد ادعاءين، واحد هو ادعاء انه هيدا امر خاص ما خص الدولة فيه، والثاني انه ميزان القوى الفعلي بيمنع المتضرر من انه يلجأ للشكوى. اذا بدها هيدي هي النقطة وهيدا كثير مهم.
Just I'd like to follow up on the question that was just given a few moments ago, because I think it's interesting to broaden it out, and it's a question of what brings about social change. Do we first have to change attitudes, change cultures, and then changes in law can then start to cause effect, or can changes in law drive social changes and changes in attitudes? And I think one can point to all sorts of different examples, and there isn't one correct answer. And so I think it's going to be a multifaceted approach, but I think one doesn't just need to necessarily say we can't, have campaigning groups or different interest groups working on changing law, even if there are, it seems like perhaps mountains to be climbed in terms of changing public attitudes. But of course, I think both go hand in hand. We've just got literally a couple of minutes left. I don't know if anybody has a final comment or questions to the panelists. Yes.
My name is Zahra Shaitu, and I'm a graduate student at the Public Administration Department here at AUB. I have two questions. First of all, for Dr. Jacqueline, your presentation was a bit too colorful for an NGO that's working on abuse and domestic violence. It mentioned all the programs and we succeeded and so on. So, but we also know that NGOs working on this specific program would also face obstacles. And there are so many obstacles, especially on the legal sphere. So, as an NGO, what are the problems that you have faced or the obstacles that you have faced within, or some of them? Because I'm not sure if all the cases were successful, that they would transmit from your NGO to another, I'm not sure, field or another institution you also mentioned. So how successful were all the cases? And were there collaborations between your NGO and other NGOs that are working on such cases as well? Because you seem to be working on your own and approaching others rather than, you mentioned the collaborations with other NGOs. And the other question is for Ms. Lydia. Is that okay? You mentioned that there's no action law and there's no penal code, but you're working on that. There is.
Yes, there is.
So my question is, training, which is something that you've been working on both as the Home of Tenderness and as CAFA. You are both training internal security forces on something that they cannot. Can they implement it? You know, if they see a domestic violence case, can they actually stop it? Okay. They can. For example, I've done my cases on dropout students. Okay, and I went to a social development center that belongs to the Ministry of Social Affairs. And one of the cases that the director mentioned is we have cases of child abuse within the homes, and that's why children are not going to school. So we went to approach the families, and the families would say, just like Mr. Mahas mentioned, this is not of your business, this is a family matter, and these are my children, I'm free to do whatever I want with them. And they called the security forces went to the house, and they were faced with the same answer, and the security forces would say, okay, we can't do anything about it, it's a family matter. They don't have a legal hand in that. So I was just wondering how would the training actually help in minimizing this case? And also you mentioned about healthcare providers not reporting such cases. Why would you think this is the case? Healthcare providers are supposed to care for the cases they're facing. So even if the families do not approve, why would not the healthcare providers themselves report such cases? So I think 3 questions.
Concerning the law, we have a criminal code now, and our law criminalizes such acts like violence, where if whatever is the victim, a woman, man, a child. So we have the law, but the problem is that we don't have a specific law concerning the domestic violence, because as we know, in some countries, they do a specific law concerning domestic violence. Because what is the problem? If I'm walking in the street and someone abuses me, so okay, I go to the court, I report, I present a claim, I will go to my home, he will went to his home, so we will go to the court and continue the procedures. But when the abuser is one of my family members, is my father, my husband, my son, my brother, so where should I go? I will go to the court and present a complaint, and then I will go to him and see him in the same home. So where is the protection measures here? We don't need to criminalize the act, because we already have the law, but we need a law of protection to take some preventions and protection. This is what we don't have in our current law. And this is what the new law or project of law is bringing to our legal system. Concerning the ISF and the trainings, I don't know, I was surprised by what Mrs. Jacqueline said about their collaboration. It's okay, as much as there is a lot of trainings good. What I know is that we signed a MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, with the Ministry of Foreign Internal Affairs and with ISF, and under the coordination of General Elil Asmar, and we are working since the beginning of the summer, maybe on June or July, on a program, a continuous program to, and especially with the ladies police officers, to how to protect women, how to receive. Now we have, if you are interested, this is a new circular تعميم صادر عن قوى الأمن العام، قوى الأمن الداخلي. هي رح يتعمم على كل مراكز قوى الأمن. هيدا مهم، سوري عم بحكي بالعربي بس هيدا مهم لكل الناس، للأشخاص الأفراد اللي مثلنا ولا الشرطة ولا كل العالم يعرفوا شو هي rules of conduct يلي مفروض تتبع من اليوم ورايح مع حالات مماثلة. كنا نواجه مثلا بمغافر تجي ست على مخفر تشتكي ليقي ما أنا بضرب مرتي شو فيها روحي على البيت، بس تروح ست بمنطقة تانية على مخفر تاني تلاقي الشرطي هونيك متجاوب ومتفهم يعني يصير حسب المبادرات الفردية. هلا ما بقى بدنا مبادرات فردية، يعني ما بدي اتكل هيدا الشرطي هون آدمي بروح لعنده والشرطي هونيك مش منيح بعد عنه، بدي كل الشرطة تلزم بنظام معمم جايها أوامر من القيادة العليا بقانون بمرسوم بأي شيء بيجبرها تتعامل مع هالحالات. وال112 كانوا يجيهم اتصال انه ست عم تتعرض للضرب تتصل بال112 ما عندنا سيارة انا بعت لك اياها تروح المسكين اكزاكتلي. فهلا لا صار في غير حالات وصار في غرفة ما بدي عم باخذ من وقت دينا.
I'm afraid that we've got a class coming in here now, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to call it to a close, and perhaps conversations, perhaps Jacqueline, you could talk afterwards privately about some of those other aspects. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming and contributing. Thank you to the panel.